dear students, welcome to Sohini's Biobook. We are going to start the very first chapter of your NCERT book, that is the living world, and we are going to go one by one through all the details of the chapters, and let's start the first topic for today. Today we are going to learn about the living world. That is the first chapter of your NCERT book. So, when we are saying the living world, then the first question about it arises that what exactly is living, or when we can define an organism as living, or what is the characteristics of it that is helpful in identifying it as a living entity. The living organisms consist the living world. So the first and foremost question is what is living and what are the characters of it. So there are some characters that define the living organisms. The fact is that we can only differentiate the living with non-living. That means there are some characters that are present in living and not present in the non-living one. Only based upon the differences we can define the living state. Without the non-living state, it is hard to define what actually life is. So the definition is based upon the differences from non-living. So let's learn the characteristics of living. The first and foremost character is metabolism. You already know about the term that is metabolism. The metabolism can be of two types, either anabolism or catabolism. So, what is metabolism? Metabolism is nothing but some chemical processes that are always going on in a body of living organism. So these are basically some chemical reactions. If it is breakdown of something, or if it is the conversion of some complex substances into simpler ones, then we will term it as catabolism. Or if it is the gain of mass weight or the gain in dry weight by formation of a complex substance from simpler ones, so then we will term it as anabolism. So catabolism is breakdown and anabolism is the formation. So there are always some reactions going on in our body. Either it is the breakdown of something, like in respiration, the substances we eat are broken down, and this is the catabolism process. It helps to give us the energy for doing work. And the anabolism is like the photosynthesis. The plants synthesize their own food. So this is the formation of food by using some light energy, water and carbon dioxide. So there is the formation, then it is anabolism. So these are the metabolism. It is never present in the body of a non-living entity. So living organisms must possess the metabolism. This is a very vital character of the life or of the living organism. The second thing that is to be discussed at the second point is growth. What is growth? Now we can see if there is a dump of any dirty things on the road, or there is a dump of sand. So it can grow day by day. If one person puts sand in a particular place for a long time, then there is growth of the dump. So this is also growth. So can we say the sand is living because it is growing day by day? No, we cannot say that. So when we say growth, it is not perfect definition of living, because growth is seen also in case of non-living things, because we can define growth by the increase in number or masses. Increase in number or mass. It is the characteristic of growth. So non-living things also increase in number by the effort of living things. So they are also growing in mass or in number. So we cannot say growth as a vital character for living things. So what is to be said perfectly? The perfect definition would be internal growth. That means growth should be developed by internal things. That means the cells in our body, they grow in number, they increase in their mass, and then that is permanent increase. That is the permanent increase of mass of a living one's body. So growth should be permanent and internal. Then it will be considered as the characteristic of a living thing. So these are the two main vital characters of living things. Now, what can be some other characteristics? 1. Metabolism. 2. Growth. The third one is the irritability. That means the living things sense their environment and they react to them accordingly. So, the power of sensing their environment or the power to sense the environment and react to them accordingly is known as irritability. That means when there is rise in temperature in the environment, our body will act accordingly. When there are fall down of temperature, then we can see the protective reactions by our body to withstand the cold. So we can sense our environment. Every living organism can sense the environment and they react to the environment properly. So this is known as the irritability. So this is also a vital characteristic of living being. We can also write the consciousness as another character. Irritability is actually the part of consciousness, because if a person is conscious about the environment or the surroundings, only then it can sense the environment and react to it. So irritability is actually the result of consciousness. So consciousness is the ability of an organism to sense its environment, and irritability is the ability of an organism to react against external stimuli, that is movement of an organism towards the light source. We can see that. So these are two another important characters. Now what can be some other characteristics of living things? Let's see them. The next important characters are cellular organization. You have already read about the cells in your lower classes. That cell is the structural and functional unit of life or the fundamental unit of life. So if there is a living state of an organism, then there must be cells present that are regulating the activity of life or the activity of the living entity. So cellular organization is a must for living organisms. They may be unicellular also, but there must be some sort of cellular nature. So this is another important characteristics. What can be next? Next is adaptation. We have already read about the irritability or consciousness. So if a person or if a living organism is able to sense its environment and its irritability help to adjust or acclimatize according to the changing environment or changing surrounding, then there must be adaptation also, and adaptation leads to evolution. So living things continuously adapt themselves to the changing environment. because otherwise they won't be able to live for a long time. So there must be change or adaptation. And what is adaptation? It is actually the permanent acclimatization. Acclimatization is not a permanent thing, but adaptation is a permanent thing. You must know the difference about what is acclimatization and what is adaptation. If you do not know, let me tell you. Acclimatization is, for example, you can think that you have moved to a place that is very cold for some days, so you have wear the sweaters, the jeans and jackets to protect yourself from the coldness. So this is the acclimatization. That means you are temporarily protecting yourself by acclimatizing with the environment, by not adapting, by developing some protective nature by yourself, or by protecting yourself with some non-living things. So this is the acclimatization. You are trying to acclimatize in the environment, but you are not permanently adapted to it. Your genetic combination has not mutated or has not changed in any way. That is adaptation. So if the genetic combination of a living thing is permanently changed and it is carried forward generation after generation, then it is called the adaptation. That's why adaptation leads to evolution. Acclimatization does not leads to evolution, but adaptation does. So this is the basic difference between acclimatization and adaptation. So adaptation is the characteristic of living things. Okay, now what can be next character? That is a very important character. What is it? It is the reproduction. Non-living things cannot reproduce themselves, but living organism reproduces itself to carry forward their generation or to carry forward the species. So if they don't reproduce, the species will be extinct in no days, in no time. So there is need for reproduction to make sure their species is carry forward. That means their species is lasting. The species is not going to be extinct in the near future. To make sure that they need to reproduce, to carry forward their generation, to produce the new organisms of their species. Okay, so this is the need for reproduction by the living organisms, and they reproduce. The reproduction may be of three types. It can be asexual, that is seen in lower organisms. It can be sexual, that is seen in higher organisms, or it can be vegetative reproduction, that is found in some lower animals and in case of most of the plants. So reproduction may be of different type, but reproduction is a must to be present in living organisms. So these are actually the basic and must to have characters for a living entity. So these are the characters of living organism. Now there is another one character that is also a defining character for living organism, that is thermoregulation. Thermoregulation, that means they prepare their body according to the outer environment. Now some organisms are ectothermic, or we call them as cold-blooded. Some organisms are endothermic, that means they are actually called commonly as warm-blooded. This is thermoregulation by the organisms. What does it mean by ectothermic and endothermic, and what is actually thermoregulation? So what ectothermic organisms do is they change their internal temperature according to the external environment's temperature in order to be in protective nature, because if there is very much cold outside, then they also change their inner temperature according to the environment. That helps them to acclimatize to the environment well. And what do the endothermic organisms do? They don't change their inner temperature, but the endotherms maintain a continuous permanent temperature inside their body. And how do they do that? They actually have different molecules in their body for providing their continuous permanent temperature inside the body. Okay, and there are some endotherms that go to activation during high temperature. They slow down their body movements, and this is actually known as summer sleep. The activation is known as summer sleep. In case of some organisms in deserts, we can see the activation process. And some do the hibernation. Some do the hibernation, or hibernation is known as winter sleep. In case of very cold climate organisms, we can see the winter sleep or hibernation. They slow down their body activity during the winter in order to keep their body warm. So there are different ways to regulate the environment or temperature of the body, or to protect themselves according to the changing temperature of the surroundings. So this is known as thermoregulation. That is very important for living organisms and a very important character. So these were some important characters of living organisms. I hope you have understood the characteristics of the living organisms. Now in the next day we will discuss about the living world and their different organisms, and how we differentiate them, and how we identify them, and what was the need for classifying them, and what are the classification processes. We will go into that, but for today this is enough, I think. So learn about the living world and let's explore them in the upcoming classes. Thank you. I hope you have enjoyed the class, and if there is any confusion, please let me know in the comment section. And if you like my teaching, then please like, share and subscribe to all of your friends to help them and also to support my effort. Thank you. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe.